Hello again and welcome to part 2. So hopefully you have completed this grid by now and filled in the 2 blank boxes with what you can infer about the bond between the dog and the horse. So let's just check your answers now against mine. I had written for number 2 that the horse is protective of the dog and kicks another dog to rescue him. And for number 3, I had written that both animals appear to be happy in and enjoy each other's company. Hopefully you've written something similar to that, although you may have used slightly different wording, that's okay. Please make sure each of the 3 inference boxes are written in full sentences, start with a capital letter and end with a full stop. Okay, let's go on to our final part of reading this lesson. What we're going to be doing next is comparing texts. We're going to be comparing text A, that's the Dalmatian text we read yesterday about Millie and her 16 puppies, with today's text, which I'll refer to as text B. We're going to be comparing texts, that means we'll be taking evidence from each one and saying what we can infer in order to show a difference between them. We often look at comparing texts in English. Sometimes we use words which compare, like let's compare similarities, like both, likewise, similarly. And other times we use contrasting words and phrases that help to show difference, such as however, whereas, unlike, on the other hand. So these are really useful words to connect and join ideas in English. You may wish to copy down the grid here or to make a note of at least 3 from each side. So now let's have a look at the right-hand side. You can see I've started to write an answer that compares text A with text B. What I've done is followed a certain approach here. I've made a statement about text A. So in text A, we learn that the owner never leaves the puppy's side. I've used a quotation from the text that supports this statement, quote, unable to leave them for even a minute. And then finally, I've written a sentence that makes an inference. From this, I can infer that she, this is Becky, the owner, is highly protective of the puppies because they are so young and need lots of care. If I now want to compare that to text B, I'm going to use one of my comparison words. And it's a difference I want to show, so I'm going to use a contrasting word such as however. And I'll follow the same process again. However, in text B, I'm going to make a statement about what I know of the horses. I'm going to use a quotation from the text and then finally say what I can infer. And we're going to be having a go at that process in a moment. But of course, first of all, we need to read some parts of each text to know what it is that we're looking for. Okay, let's go. So I want you to think about how the dogs in each of the 2 texts that we've looked at have been treated perhaps differently. And we're going to need to make some inference about this using the words and phrases that are there on the page. So let's start by reading back through text A. This was the text with Millie. 2 years ago, when it was time for Millie to become a mother, Becky set about the business of canine love matching via the internet. This eventually led her to Coventry, the home of a spotty suitor named Dexter. Then, when Millie failed to go into labour 2 days after her due date, the vet decided to perform a caesarean. He started lifting the puppies out and eventually got to 8, says Becky. He thought that was it, but then he said, I'll start on the other half now. We couldn't believe it. It wasn't long before they were running all over the place, tipping over boxes of cotton wool and almost sliding off the table onto the floor. So this is our text A. We want to look at how the dogs are treated. So what can we tell about the way that the human beings might treat them? What do they say about them? Are they allowed to live in the house, or are they left to live elsewhere perhaps? Now let's have a look at text B. The late Mr. Thomas Walker of Manchester had a small Dalmatian dog, which was accustomed to be in the stable with the 2 carriage horses and to lie in a stall with one of them, to which he was particularly attached. The servant who took care of the horses was ordered to go to Stockport upon one of the horses and took the one above mentioned with him, left the other with the dog in the stable, being apprehensive in case the dog, which was much valued by his master, should be lost upon the road. So we can see we've got quite a different text. We know it's a much older text from the 19th century. We want to look at how the dog is treated here. And are there any differences that we can maybe make or identify between the two? So I'm going to ask you to pause the video and think about if you were to have to choose 1 or 2 quotations from each side to say how the dog seems to be treated by their human masters, if you like, which quotations would you use and how does each one seem to be different? You may wish to do this as a thinking task, or you may wish to make some notes at this point, and in a minute or so we're going to go through the answers together. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the things that I have chosen. Remember, they're not going to be necessarily exactly the same as yours, but what I've noticed here is that in text A, the dog is really treated almost like a human being. They talk about trying to find her a match on the internet, find her a suitor so that she could become a mother, and even the wording of the vet who decided to perform a caesarean in order to take the puppies out. It all sounds very human-like, and we can clearly see that these pets are very carefully cared for and brought up in the home. In text B, we can see that the dog, although is clearly cared for by its master, is treated much more like a work dog and lives outside, sometimes with the horses in the stable, and we can see that's been really what causes this nice bond to happen between the dog and the horse. We also get the sense that Mr. Thomas Walker is a little bit more detached from his dog, and that although it says he was much valued by the master, he still seems to care for him. Doesn't really have the dog living in the home or treated as a domestic animal in the same way. And we can see also that it's the servant who is caring for the horses and taking the horses and the dogs out. And we can see that the servant's quite worried in case anything should happen to the dog. They don't want to lose it, which again emphasises that its owner really does care for it. If we go back to text A, we can see that, wow, there are so many puppies that when they're born that they are uncontrollable and they're just allowed to really run all over the place, tipping things over, sliding off the table and causing some real chaos on the farm. So there's lots of evidence that we could pick up, but we don't want to look at it all. We want to choose one short quotation and then make an inference. So in text A, the writer presents the dogs as domesticated animals who are really cared for in the home. For example, it says that the vet decided to perform a caesarean, and perhaps from this I can infer that the pet is being cared for and treated carefully as if it was a human being, showing how much its owner really values it. If we look across to text B then, however, in text B, we're going to want to find some other evidence. Is that dog treated differently here, and if so, why? And what can we infer? Once you've chosen your 2 quotations that you're going to compare, we're going to write them up. And that will take us on to the next slide. So don't be afraid to go back slightly in the video in a moment if you need to check your evidence again. So your exit ticket today is going to be completing this task. You're going to write me a very short summary of the ways that dogs are treated differently in each text. Tell me about text A first. Make sure you use a quotation and make an inference. Use a nice comparative word such as however in text B. Make your statement, use a quotation, then your inference, and if you want to, you can then finish up with an overall. What is clear about the Dalmatians in each text? That's going to show your overall understanding, and that will give you a nice piece of work then to submit to your teacher to show your understanding of today's reading. Really well done, and don't forget that both texts are available in full on Show My Homework if you need to read back through them and to check any of your answers. Thank you for listening. Hope you have a lovely day. Look forward to seeing you next lesson. Bye.